I've been receiving a few interesting comments on the latest videos, and I wanted to address one that has to do with controlled opposition because I do think it's important to point this out. And so I'm just going to dedicate this video towards that one topic, which has to do with, do people actually know their controlled opposition and everything that goes into that. The comment read somewhere along the lines, do these people such as Ike and others, do they know when they are controlled opposition? And my reply was yes, they absolutely know. This is a conscious choice. You don't just fall into this, but these people need to sell their soul off to the devil for the fame they want. And devil meaning it could be the actual devil, absolutely. But what I meant more with that was they have to sell them off to these Illuminati, Cabal members, Matrix controllers, and usually rituals are involved. And of course, they need to occasionally throw up Illuminati symbols in their content to pledge their allegiance. And that's a huge, massive one, because when I see that, when I go through videos such as the Ike video and also other videos, not just him, I want to say this clear, loud and clear. It's not just him, it's many other people too. But when I go through those videos and I see all of a sudden there are these symbols that are put in, such as in the intro logo or whatever you want to call that he plays, it's very clear to me what he is. But that's not just the only reason, but that's just one of many reasons. What I do need to say is we should define what controlled opposition is, just so we're on the same page. And here's a definition I personally like a lot. Controlled opposition refers to a group or individual that appears to oppose a dominant power, a political regime, or the mainstream narrative, but is actually being influenced, funded, or directly controlled by that same power. And that's exactly the problem we're having here with the entire truther movement, which I also like to call mistruther movement for exactly that reason. And yes, Ike is part of that, but so are many others. The name Alex Jones was thrown in and everything. Yes, I do believe a lot of them are part of this. They are controlled opposition. And you always find a sign when you go through their material. So yeah, I like to put them all in the same boat as also other people in the limelight, such as celebrities and influencers, which is why I chose this picture as the background. Because, actually other people do say they are all together. I think Donald Marshall was the one who was talking about Ike and Britney Spears all being in their underground facilities, meaning they're clones and that they're having fights and everything together. And I totally believe that's true, by the way. And these people have several different clones, which is why their energy always looks different in the interviews as opposed to their own personal videos or other types of content they put out there. And when you read energy, you can pick up on that very clearly. And if you take the example of Britney Spears, just as an example, her teeth, like all of a sudden she has a tooth gap that wasn't there 20 years ago. Like it's quite clear that these are not the original characters that they were from the start, that there's underground cloning going on that the regular person would never really know about, but it still happens. So I do believe there are different types and variations to this entire narrative of being a puppet, being a controlled opposition person, being a celebrity and influencer. On one hand, you really do have these massive influencers and celebrities such as Britney Spears, such as Michael Jackson. And I do want to put Charlie Kirk into that as well. I had a video on Charlie Kirk, what happened to him when he was killed. But these people get recycled from lifetime to lifetime, from one body to the next, because they follow a much deeper agenda and they were likely groomed to be puppets from the start. And a lot of times this goes through the handlers. Some of the handlers is their parents, not with all of them, but with some of them. With others, they have a different type of handler, but you always find it somehow in their pictures when you really look very clearly. And so the reason I put Kirk in there is because in that video from a few months ago, I had mentioned how he never really got to die properly, but he basically, his consciousness was transferred from his one body straight into the next. It was in this holding space where they were just waiting for the next body to be ready. That's not what happens with a regular person like you and I. That's not happens when we die at all. This is really something that happens with celebrities, with massive puppets who are reinforcing the agenda. I don't know if this is going to happen with Ike. I wouldn't be surprised if it does. If people are already talking about how he has a lot of clones and how he's participating in all these rituals in the underground facilities, whatever they have, I wouldn't be surprised if this is what happens with him. I personally don't care that much about him, but it is part of this entire agenda, right? So that is one group that you have. And then you also have other types of groups, such as the influencers, who are relatively new to this. If you look back 10, 15 years ago, something like influencers didn't even exist. But now that our entire reality is showcased online, not just in TV, but actually online on the internet, right? They're creating reels 24/7, live streams 24/7. Everything, like all the travel influencers are a huge one, ruining places because of this. Like all of this is relatively new. It just came out in the past decade or so. Influencers are another group. Some who are only doing this for one lifetime and one lifetime only, others who are doing it for more than one lifetime. Before the advent of TV, you had other puppets that were playing their game. I like to call those usually the royals. Not every single royal or celebrity in those times was a puppet, absolutely not. For me, it's very clear that Marie Antoinette was one of them, that she sold her soul off to the devil somehow. Very dark soul when I tap into her. And so for me, it's always interesting to, look into ancestry and ancestral lineages in that way, because it shows a lot too, and where people come from. Now, with TV actors programming, what you have nowadays is an entire theater show dedicated towards celebrities, the worship of celebrities, and it's always thrown into our faces to confuse us, to confuse our souls, and to confuse our lives too. Because for a lot of, especially the younger people, this is not going to be the case for you or for people who are of a different age, but especially the younger people, the teenagers, everything, it's all about comparison, right? You have to compare yourself to that celebrity, or you want to be as famous as that celebrity, or it's like your entire life is dedicated towards a TV series and you don't really have a life outside of, like, the entire pop culture comes from somewhere. Netflix series, Hulu series, all of that, it's really hijacking your consciousness, the consciousness of these younger people especially, but also no matter what your age is, if you're into that. And it's a toxic way that's being shown to you, not the healthy living. And it's toxic, especially mentally on a soul level. And before the advent of these so-called celebrities, I'm sure it was done differently. I'm sure you still had all these puppets, maybe not to the extent that you do now. I do think nowadays you have way more controlled opposition, way more influencers, way more puppets than you ever had. And they have to make them somewhere in the machine where they're creating these artificial humans, artificial beings. They have to make them somewhere. And that's why the term soulless beings is becoming more and more relevant, because a lot of them are just these soulless characters, right? And I do think you have way more than you ever did before. So you might not have had as many 100, 200, 300 years ago, which also coincides with population statistics going up, if you look at it that way, right? So all of a sudden you have way more people populating this earth, at least statistically speaking. Like, where are all these people coming from? They didn't exist 300, 400, like, it's just strange, right? Like, if you know anything about reincarnation or being recycled from life to life, to me, it makes a lot of sense. So these are relatively new people in the system. You didn't have nearly as many, and I wouldn't be surprised if most of those puppets acted through the royal lines, no matter what country they were in, such as queens, kings, princesses, everything, or even the military, because that's where you would have found fame back then, right? And I think Napoleon, maybe, I'm not sure about Napoleon actually, but I do think people like some of the royals surely sold their soul off somehow and would have the hardest time retrieving that now. Hence, they can't really help you much, even if they claim they can. So people do get recycled in different reincarnations over and over. I do think that perhaps if you were an Illuminati member in a previous lifetime, you wouldn't necessarily have to come back as that, unless you're part of that first group where that's literally your mission, the only purpose to your life. So I do think some of these puppets from 200-300 years ago are just coming back as regular reincarnations, but they still really can't help you much, because they have to retrieve that major soul part that was taken from them. Nowadays, you have influencers, micro-influencers, basically almost everything on a stage is acting. Stage meaning anything that you see on a screen. Why do they want it? Good question. Why would you even want to mingle with us, right? I mean, for me, it's clear, like, the trade-off is really not worth it. I don't think I would ever even consider anything like this remotely, but I think people who are easily influenceable, they might want the money, the riches, the fame, the lifestyle. There could be many reasons to it. Some just want to be in the limelight for their ego. Others really just want the fast cars, the lifestyle, everything that goes into it, because that's how it's being sold to us, right? Oh, yes, just become this like crypto king and you'll be good to go for the rest of your life. But I mean, yeah. Rituals. There have to be rituals involved in all of this. Some get dragged into it. Others really wanted it. And of course, some were just children and child actors. And those poor souls just got dragged into it because of their parents. So when I look at Justin Bieber, Britney Spears, like all of those Minnie Mouse Club members from back in the days, I'm pretty sure none of them really wanted it. I do think strongly the parents and the parents' greed was played a very strong part in that. In general, if they have an audience, it's almost always safe to assume they are controlled somehow, at least if the audience is growing. I do know a few people who seem extremely genuine when I look at travel content influencers or people who just, in that realm specifically. Some are stuck at around 100K and they've not grown in 5+ years just because they went to really exciting places such as Venezuela, Iraq, and that's how they blew up, because it was very dangerous to go there and this and that. And I do think some are quite sincere with what they want to accomplish. And I haven't really seen symbols that they displayed in their stuff, but yet for others, that's not the case, especially the ones that grow very speedily and seem to just, from one day to another blow up, or also people who really haven't just been around for that long. I know people and companies who've been trying to elevate themselves for the past 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, never made it in that sense. They are able to make an income with it and a business off of it. But for example, their social media accounts never blew up. And this is the reason why they never gained that so-called fame, unless it was just in the group that they're in or the intimate setting that they're in, because they never sold out their souls in that way. And it's a huge one. Once you start realizing this, it's a huge one. The censorship was so real for almost every single one of us, right? Every single one who had some sort of a presence online from 2020 on, everyone was so censored. Again, I'm not saying this to complain it, but it does do a number on your message when you want to spread that message and your accounts are either being shut down or extremely censored so that no one ever sees what you're putting out, or you have to look for alternatives and alternative platforms. And no, I do not believe that Ike was ever censored, even though supposedly his YouTube was shut down or whatever. He was always there. He always had interviews that he was giving. He was always on these other platforms. He was never censored. I don't think his income has ever suffered from any type of censorship. Let's put it that way. And for me, it's very clear with the symbols he's throwing up, with the stuff that he puts in his intro logo, everything, it's clear for me that he's another puppet. They want the small people to stay small. They don't want you to win. They want you to lose. So you need to become that person who really, you need to become the biggest fan of what you're doing, of who you are, what you want to create, because no social media platform in the world will show you that anyhow. You need to basically become the best person that you can if you really want to make an impact. Now, celebrities usually have a handler, and I think they're telling us that very clearly by showing us, oh, look at the P. Diddy scandal or the Kanye scandals, all of that. I personally think other people are way more influential as handlers, such as Timberland. He's always been in the background. But I also think some of these handlers are parents. So you don't really see them in the limelight, but they're really directing these influencers and celebrities in the background. I don't think every single celebrity has a handler either. I want to put that out there, but I do think a lot of them do. And it depends on the age that they came into this entire club. Also, they do get recycled back into their puppet roles, but not all. And it really depends on how much they were in this world and how much of the rituals they did. Do you need a ceremony to be included in this? My guess is, and from what I've been trying to read on this for the past few years already, I do think there's an actual ceremony that's involved for most people. But it also appears that nowadays a lot of these things are done online. And so when I aired this one video where it was saying the real meaning behind the one eye symbol, and Jonna Jinton started throwing that up about 2 years ago, I'll link that video here too. I actually got some very interesting comments. And one comment was saying something along the lines of, because I was going after these micro influencers, even like a person who only has like 100 or 200K followers. And he was basically having a video where he was doing this too, like the one eye in one of his thumbnails. And the title was 36 hours without eating. And a person commented, get a calculator, go 1 + 2 + 3 all the way to 36, and then hit the equal sign and you'll see what number you get. And the number is 666. And I was like, how did you even come up with that? And I guess someone else had made a video on that like earlier in the year. And then the person went on saying how my friends told me her father got a pop-up on his computer from them inviting him to join, meaning inviting them to join into the club. He was into some dark stuff and had plenty of entity attachments, and they took notice. They have every resource available to them, from arcane to advanced tech beyond our wildest imaginations. And then I wanted to know how much they actually offered him, because they have to offer something, right? It's like, was it like a few million? Is it the fame? Is it whatever? But I didn't really get much of a reply to that. So it seems like he turned it down or something. And then there was another comment in regards to the 36 hours, meaning the number 9 and like 666 and everything. So these are all Luciferian symbols meant to convey their allegiance to the ruling elites who worship Lucifer, whose seat of power was, in this case, the person saying the planet Saturn, and Saturn is the 6th planet from our star and has 18 mates. So like the number 6 is coming up over and over again. Not sure I necessarily agree with the planet being thrown in here, but yes, they do use those in their rituals probably. So, we will, as regular people, we will probably never really know what's going on unless you're part of this club. And when you're part of this club, you're obviously not going to really comment on this video or let us know that you are part of the club. But what I do have to say in regards to Jonna Jinton specifically, because I still get some upset comments about her being like, oh no, she's still legit. The moment she got featured, like the moment her energy changed is pretty much when her stuff also blew up. She was always popular with what she was doing. She does create great things, don't get me wrong. I used to like her stuff a lot too, until she started throwing up these things and I was like, oh no, another one who's in the club. But the thing is, she kind of did blow up out of nowhere. I think that was in 2018, 2019, because that's when I discovered her. And then she started getting featured on the news and all of that. And that's when she started, showing certain symbols in her things. And someone commented recently how supposedly her marriage broke apart. And this really corresponds to what I've gotten also with other club influencers, that the moment they start being a part of the Illuminati club, their long-standing relationships go away, and also friendships with others, meaning their entire social circle completely revamps and turns into something else. And it's because of their energy changing so much. I don't think it's necessarily because of growth necessarily. I mean, you can always say, okay, maybe Jonna Jinton and her marriage broke apart because they just grew apart. They're relatively young still, this and that. And you can, but for me, it's always a sign that the energy changes so profusely that they don't really want to be in that person's energy field anymore, because they can pick up something changed. And usually it is like these entity attachments that we talk about. Okay, so with influencers also, they tend to ruin places. That's what is really happening here where I am as well. It's not just regular transplants you're dealing with anymore. You're dealing with an actual boom of, everything rising profoundly. People can't afford this and that, no matter where in the world you are. But this is really what's going on. They're trying to tear people apart to degrees that it was never done before. And of course, they do that financially. And there's a lot that I can say in regards to that. But another person was commenting how, once these people take over a place, they actually only want people of their same club in that place. They don't want regular people living there anymore. And that really does correspond to a lot what I've gotten, especially when you look at beautiful places in the world that used to be relatively cheap 5 years ago. And then all of a sudden, boom, some influencer blows up, throws up Illuminati symbols. claims they make, oh, 100, 200K months or whatever, and now that place is ruined or that aspect of a business is ruined. So it's just interesting when you see a pattern, you see a pattern. For me personally, it's still pretty cute how some people believe these people don't know what they're doing, such as Ike or others. Another thing that goes into that is when you look at new age people who can also be, part of this, maybe not controlled opposition, but again, in a way they are, because they're really promoting the alien ET agenda. You have a difference to when someone is just starting to channel and then all of a sudden they become big and they're also part of the club. It's just, you have these different variations to all of this, because when someone first starts channeling, there's a form of entity attachment, entity possession going on that they personally might not even know in the beginning. And then the bigger their messages get, because these entities are feeding their messages to them, right? Like the bigger they get, the bigger the person gets. Now they have a chance to join the club, even though they never even wanted to be part of the club from the start, but now they have a chance to really blow up, get their messages across. That's kind of how you have to see it. And that's really what I see with a lot of these new age channelers. It's very clear controlled opposition when you're still talking about ETs, when you're still talking about hybrid children, all of that. And a lot of these agendas are really revealed in the general pop culture, song culture, pop culture songs and everything, in movies as well. The Matrix movies are a marvelous example of that. So are many others, some of them that I have discussed on this channel, where they just give you, dream manipulation and this and that. There's a really interesting movie that Robert Pattinson came out with earlier this year. I haven't seen it yet, but it's called Mickey 17. And that one is all about cloning and how your own clone is attacking. From my understanding, at least, I haven't seen it yet. And I'm like, oh, that is so interesting that this is coming out during these times right now. And of course, it's being promoted by him because he's one of them that blew up out of nowhere pretty much. He became really famous with the Twilight series. And if you look at the message of everything in Twilight, soulless vampires still existing among, like those type of things, it all makes sense. So they need to give you half truths to get your consent. Consent is still important, by the way. They absolutely need your consent, but they are tricking you left and right. And they have to trick you because we're powerful beings and we know that, but they always want you to forget that. And this is also where the worshiping of celebrities comes in, because when you're so busy worshiping a celebrity or a VIP, you forget that, oh, actually, you're way more powerful than them. Like they don't matter at all. And so you have to look at it in that sense too. And it's amazing for me. It's still amazing how some people think Ike and others get randomly dragged into this. They don't know that the messages they're spreading is controlled opposition, because it shows me that whoever thinks that, you're still coming from a place of pure intent, and you're still coming from a place that you think there's so much positive in the world. And of course, it's just a coincidence that he throws up Illuminati symbols and it couldn't be different. But I do want to remind you that we're not here to fall asleep again. We're here to stay awake, and you owe it to yourself to wake up, not just from one little deception, but from all deceptions, and also this one. And I'm not saying I personally have all the answers, but I have dug through this for a while already. And I have heard stories by people who contacted me who are giving me more and more puzzle pieces to this entire mystery. I've also done a lot of research on royal bloodlines, on other people who could have potentially sold their soul off to the devil, where they are now. So my interest does reach quite far in this. For me, what is still a little bit of a mystery is the Freemasonry, the Freemasons, and the certain degrees they have, because I still don't understand how people join them after everything, all the information that's out there. Like if people really just think they're a fraternity or some sort of harmless group, then I am aware that you need to be a certain degree of Freemason, such as the 33rd degree or third degree or whatever it is. But it must be blatantly clear that whatever they represent is not right. And the symbols they use, that compass symbol, everything, it's clear to everyone who has eyes to see what they are. So maybe that's similar to other groups that exist as well. But for me, it's always a mystery when I keep receiving comments from Freemasons who are like, oh, they're just harmless and I'm a Freemason. And I'm like, okay, congratulations. You really don't know what's going on. And I also think once you start, reading energy, you don't get deceived as naturally or as easily as other people do. And I believe the reason these topics are blowing up right now or gaining traction is because people are really tired of the deceptions and being led around in circles and dead end streets. And energetically, we can all feel when we're being made a fool of or when things are not adding up. And I believe this is why this material is more relevant now than it has ever been before, even just a few years ago. I hope this helps. I didn't really know how else to record this video. It's like the third try that I tried putting it together and putting my thoughts into it. But I hope this helps someone just to see that, they're all puppets, they're all in the same boat somehow. I'm not saying every single person who has a presence online is necessarily part of it, but you would need to look whether or not they are throwing up certain symbols, whether or not, what's really going on. And I'm not talking about the tiny channels either, by the way. Like, I think it's quite clear that most of those are probably not part of the club. Some could be, but I think most of them are not. So it's really about getting the bigger picture here and start worshiping people just because they have a certain type of media presence, let's put it that way, and really trying to put things together. And then a big question, I guess, is always like, okay, but if he's controlled opposition, well, why is he disclosing all of this? I think the definition kind of says it all. It's an individual that appears to oppose a mainstream narrative, which is very much the sense for Ike and also others, but they're actually being influenced, funded, or directly controlled by that same power. Because if you can control that one person and just disclose a little bit and never the full truth, they're going to keep believing you over and over again. But the full truth actually goes so much deeper and there's so much more to it. There's so many more things and complex things that go into it that, like, you're never going to dig through those because you think, oh, he just gave me everything. He just gave it. No, he didn't. He didn't. And also they want you to create these certain types of realities they want you in to keep you down. And you, as a powerful being, powerful person who can create realities on your own, you need to realize that too. So why wouldn't you rather create something of a more positive outcome is my question always when that comes up. I hope this helps and let me know if it does. I think this is everything I can say on the topic right now, and I hope it makes sense. See you in the next one. Until then.